Good morning. It's just a couple of days before the next new moon, and so I want to talk today about the lunar month that begins on April 17th. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Takes just a few seconds as I get rid of panels that are in my way. Almost there. Okay, so this is the lunar month for the world, America, and Trump, April 17th through May 16th. And I'll start with a review of what has been happening in the previous lunar month. Some of the things I said were the world will continue to move toward a new world order as a result of that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And I had in the last week of the lunar month, force may be used to implement change due to Mars conjunct Saturn-Neptune. We had Mars make an exact conjunction with Neptune a few days earlier, and that created some indecision, some muddling in what to do with force. And the exact conjunction of Mars with Saturn is coming up, I believe, on April 19th, uh, suggesting a possibility that the current ceasefire in with Iran may fall apart a bit around that time. And then I also said frequent tense aspects will create almost continual unrest and alertness. I think that has been the case. Now, in terms of results, with the continual bombing of Iran by America and Israel, along with counterattacks by Iran, the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump's continuing to insult and alienate America's allies, the world order is indeed changing. And we are currently in perhaps a partial opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Uh, I'm not sure if ships are going through it freely as they did before. Trump has imposed a blockade on ports of Iran. It seems like it's not yet 100% effective. The good news is that so far, given all the tense aspects in this past lunar month, and as they were building up in April, the good news is that only 80%, in my estimation, of the bad stuff that could have happened has happened. Remember, Trump was about an hour and a half away from carrying out his threat to bomb Iran back into the Stone Age when he agreed to the ceasefire and some diplomatic talks. So, because of that, because some restraint prevailed on both sides, we did not get so far the absolute worst of what could happen in this previous lunar month, in the March-April lunar month. Nonetheless, the actions of Israel and Trump have resulted in gas shortages and higher prices around the world. And with Mars and Pisces until April 9th, up until then, goals and planning surrounding the war in Iran continued to be nebulous. And more recently, the ceasefire talks collapsed. As I said, America has imposed a blockade on Iranian ports, and Trump is mulling more air attacks, according to the news. Okay, summary for America. I said that America will feel almost continual wounding restrictions and unrest throughout the lunar month, and America will have to deal with frustrations or restrictions from other countries or people. I said growth would be difficult, and it has slowed down incredibly, according to the news, and inflation has gone up quite a bit. And the results observed as a following Trump's war with Iran and its economic consequences, that's created an environment that has been continually tense throughout the month. We have higher gas prices and inflation. And gas prices spiked on March 26th, just as Saturn was moving from southern declination to northern declination. That might be a long-term effect of what's going on now. And from March 26th through April 1st, the war with Iran intensified in response to hard aspects from Mars, but barely an hour and a half before massive bombing was to begin on April 7th, the United States and Iran uh, agreed to a ceasefire. The ceasefire talks have somewhat collapsed. It looks like they're going to try and meet again. And so America has imposed a blockade on Iranian ports. As I said, Trump is mulling more air attacks. And for Trump, I said that he would likely continue to experience wounding to his reputation, and that there were a couple of possibly good periods, but the rest of the lunar month would be filled with frequent tensions for him. We're not quite yet at the time of the new moon on April 7th, but that's a time that could be particularly dangerous for him, or he could be a danger for others. And said, I'm anticipating actions this month that will benefit him financially, and that something will bring him more physical healing toward the end. That's when transing Pluto starts to trine his natal Neptune in the second house, and transing Chiron, Sun, and Moon at the time of the new moon, April 17th, will trine his natal Mars. Well, this past month, Trump's reputation within the country and without the country has certainly taken a beating. His approval rating has continued to plummet. The most recent thing was when he posted a meme of himself as Jesus Christ healing people. And he's gotten into this bitter argument with the Pope on social media, and I don't think he can win when he criticizes the Pope in the way he has been doing. And of course, several Democrats are now calling for Trump's impeachment or removal using the 25th Amendment of the Constitution. There is real concern that he has mentally just lost it and that he's a danger to himself and others and needs to be committed. And in terms of benefiting himself financially, we don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes with his finances, of course, but Trump has expressed his desire to seize Iran's oil. That's other people's resources. Remember, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction occurred in his 8th house, which is other people's resources. And it was opposite his natal Neptune in the 2nd house, his finances, and also Neptune rules oil. And Trump has expressed the desire to jointly, along with Iran, charge ships a toll for going through the Strait of Hormuz. And there's always this feeling that whatever goes into America's coffers will then, in one way or another, go into Trump's pockets. It doesn't have to go into his pockets directly. He can get money into accounts for America, and then he often uses that money for whatever he wants, whether it's trips, weekly trips to Mar-a-Lago or other things. And European allies, for the most part, are refusing or offering only limited support for Trump's war with Iran. And as I said at the top, Trump has been severely criticized for posting a picture of himself as Jesus. Okay, well, let's take a look at this upcoming month. Near the beginning of the month, Mars is conjunct Saturn. The month starts on the 17th of April. Mars will be exactly conjunct Saturn on the 19th, and hopefully nothing will happen, but there will be definitely a heightened risk of war or aggression at this time. Modern statistical studies have shown that Mars and Saturn are indeed the gods of war. And then, as we get toward the end of this lunar month and near the beginning of the next one, Mars will be conjunct Chiron right at the next new moon on May 16th, the beginning of the following lunar month. At worst, this could be a lot of wounding that occurs through aggression. At best, we'll be seeing actions taken to heal those people who have been the victims of aggression or other misadventures. Now, the good news is that in between the start of this lunar month and the end of the lunar month, things look much quieter. We do have some days of tension, but they don't last that long. Of course, at the end, we have Jupiter making a sesquiquadrant to the north node, which means he'll make a semi-square to the south node. Jupiter will be in Cancer. That could bring families, people's homes, their personal environment to the forefront. There might be an outcry, protests over the things that are going on, for example. Okay, if we look at aspects that become exact during this month, some of the things we see are Mars conjunct Saturn on April 19th. That's a dangerous period. On the 20th, we have Mercury conjunct Saturn and then Mars. That could result in some tense communications or rhetoric. On the 23rd, we have Venus conjunct Uranus, and there's a tendency for unexpected things that affect our values, go against our values quite a bit, to happen at that time whenever Venus and Uranus are conjunct. On the 25th, we have two important things going on. Transing Sun will be square Pluto. That just lasts for 2 or 3 days. But it could be with Sun and Taurus, have to do with financial things. And Pluto and Aquarius, there could be a disconnect between the financial world and the powers that be and the decisions that those powers make. Also on the 25th, Uranus goes back into Gemini, where it's going to stay for quite a few years. It's not going to retrograde back into Taurus anymore. And this is really going to kick off an age of invention and probably new types of communication technology. On May 1st, we have Mercury conjunct Chiron. That can be wounding of some sort, maybe to communication, perhaps communication satellites. It could be words that wound. If we're lucky, though, it will be words that heal. We'll get the good side of Chiron. On the 4th and the 5th, those will be a little tense as Mars squares Jupiter and Mercury squares Pluto. Mars squared Jupiter could result in expansion of aggressive actions. Mercury squared Pluto people's left brains, their verbal side, their words will be at odds with those who have power. And Mercury also rules commerce and trade, so that could be affected. On May 6th, Pluto turns retrograde, so the powers that be may take a pause to think about what's going on and ponder what decisions to make. And then, of course, the end of the lunar month, beginning of the next lunar month, we have Mars conjunct Chiron. Probably what's most likely are people being wounded through aggressive actions. What we hope would happen, what is still possible, is people taking action to heal others. Let's hope that that's what occurs. Okay. The new moon on April 17th, it is a monster of a new moon. As far as I am concerned, we have Mercury conjunct Neptune. This could create some muddled thinking, some delusional thinking. And in light of current circumstances, this could also relate to Mercury to trade and commerce, Neptune to oil. There might be actions taken one way or another to try and free up the flow of oil, for instance, through the Strait of Hormuz, or to get oil from other resources. But that will probably be a focus. Mars conjunct Saturn. It's got a couple of days before it's exact, but as I say, those are the gods of war. So there's increased likelihood of aggressive actions being taken. If we're lucky, we will see Saturn acting to constrain the tendency to go to war and increase combat. So it could work out that way if people are wise enough. And then we have Sun, Moon, and Chiron very tightly conjunct one another. Normally that would result in a lot of wounding. But if people take the high road, the focus will be on healing. So again, let's hope that happens. And remember, this new moon is not only the culmination of what's been going on for the previous month, it also sets the tone for the next lunar month. So whether we get the good side or the bad side of these conjunctions, it will be an underlying tone, most likely, for the rest of the lunar month. Now, Pluto is going to be making a sextile to Mars and Saturn. And again, in light of current conflicts in the world, this will probably represent collective action, group action by leaders, probably in the European Union and elsewhere, to try and mediate and bring some control, some better resolution to some of the conflicts. Saturn is going to be making a quincunx to the lunar nodal axis. Saturn is control and regulation. The lunar nodes intensify things. Of course, there's a variety of ways this could work out. There could be a focus on gaining control of some of these out of control situations in the world right now. That would be good. In some quarters, this could represent more restrictions upon the people, more attempts to control what the population does. But as usual, I'm hoping for a more beneficial expression of this particular aspect. And as I said, everything here is going to set the tone for the month to come. Also, I don't usually talk about a lot of the minor aspects, but throughout this lunar month, when we look at the new moon, the quarter moons, the full moons, there are going to be a lot of septiles taking place. And the best research on what septiles really mean, there's a lot of different and varying opinions. Many I don't agree with that much. But the best research out there suggests that septiles tend to create a focus within a person. Think of it as when you're getting ready to go out on a first date. Uh, you suddenly have this very sharp focus on what you're wearing, how you're going to look, what you're going to say. You don't just go into it without this extra thought. So this is going to be a lot of what this month is like. There will be a lot of intense focus on things, most likely to try and get problems resolved. Oh, another thing I want to say about these aspects from Saturn to the lunar nodes is another way in which this could manifest is as a month of shortages for people. And that will probably happen if things don't get resolved with the flow and the price of oil. At the first quarter moon, things get a little more tense because the sun, moon, and Pluto will be forming a T-square with one another. And with Moon and Taurus, there will probably be a specific concern on financial matters. Let's see, Neptune, Saturn, Mars, and Mercury, they're not exactly conjunct, but they're all pairwise conjunct and kind of act like one big conjunction. And so, again, the whole focus may be on oil, trade, commerce, war, restrictions, the ramifications of things going on with Iran. Or there may be some other things which also arise. Uranus is going to be pretty strongly conjunct Venus at this point. It's exact to the degree. And so we need to keep an eye out for what unexpected events happen, what wild card events occur around this time. Uranus and Venus are going to be making a semi-square to Mercury. That means that some unexpected things could affect trade and commerce, or there could be some unexpected rhetoric that could cause things to fall apart. We do have Moon making a trine to Neptune. The moon, of course, moves pretty quickly, but at this instant of the full moon, or the first quarter moon, rather, it's going to be pretty strong. And so we may get some good news regarding oil. And in general, this is going to be beneficial for people's imaginations. Some will experience more transcendent states of consciousness. That'll be a good thing. And Uranus and Venus are also making a septile to Saturn, which looks like it's going to be pretty strong. And yeah, it's going to be quite strong. So this is most likely going to put a focus on trying to get control of some situation. And it may be a wild card event, a situation that is just erupting of its own accord that we'll want to try and get some control of. The very next day, let's see, the first quarter moon's on the 23rd. Very next day, Neptune, it will move from southern declination to northern declination. And remember, Saturn moving to northern declination, Neptune moving to northern declination. I think of those as the two aftershocks of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Those shifts from southern to northern declination by themselves can bring about big societal shifts. So the whole world order is really changing right now. And we got most of the same aspects, a few new ones from what we had the day before. We have Sun still square Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, Mars, Mercury still conjunct. Uranus is still conjunct Venus. Uranus and Venus are still semi-square Mercury. The moon has moved on a little bit. It's now trining more Mars and Mercury. So there may be some beneficial actions that take place that help reduce some of the aggressive tension out there. Uranus is still making a sextile to Saturn. Venus is making a quintile to the moon at this point. And so that will help people feel good. A quintile is like that euphoria after the first date. So there may be some things happen here which make people feel a little better on April 24th. And we have on this day not only a lot of septiles, but also a lot of quintiles going on. Not just Venus quintile moon. If you look at sort of these violet lines in here, they're all quintiles. Then we get to the full moon on May 1st. Mercury is going to conjunct Chiron. And the big question is, are we going to see on this day words that wound or words that heal? It could go either way. If we are evolved enough, we will engage in words that are healing. If not, we could see a lot of very divisive rhetoric that wounds things. Unfortunately, we have Jupiter square Mars on this day. It's applying, it's building in strength. And Jupiter square Mars, it will create a tendency for aggressive actions to increase and multiply. And Venus is going to be square the lunar nodal axis. And there's going to be some tension probably surrounding people's values and what people want, what they feel that they need. So this might pertain to shortages brought on by restrictions to the flow of oil, if that does indeed continue for a while. But we have Venus sextile Saturn, and that's going to be beneficial. Saturn probably has to do here with long-term plans and strategies, structures we're putting in place. So with Venus making a sextile to Saturn, some long-term plans may be made to deal with some of the problems that people are facing so that they can get the things they need and so that their values can be fed, so to speak. But we still have a lot of septiles going on. So like I say, it's going to be a whole month of an intense focus on various situations in the world and things we have to deal with. When we get to the third quarter moon, Mars is moving into that exact conjunction with Chiron. So this last week might be rather tense because Mars conjunct Chiron, this could represent a lot of wounding through aggression. Though, as I said, if people take the high road, there is that possibility of people taking aggressive actions to heal, not to wound. But Mars is going to be still square Jupiter. It's just past the exact square at this point. And as that builds and becomes exact in between the full moon and the third quarter moon, there is a greater probability or likelihood of aggressive actions being taken. Let's see, Neptune is making a semi-square to the sun and to the moon. And again, there's different ways that could work out. Neptune could act to cloud the situation a bit. With Neptune and Aries, it could be the fog of war, creating some confusion. This could put additional focus on oil, for instance. For a few, this will be just the motivation they need to transcend and enter more enlightened states. So a variety of things that could happen. Jupiter is making a semi-square sesquiquadrate to the lunar nodal axis. Jupiter is in Cancer, which has to do with the family, the home environment, your personal security. So there may be a clamoring from the masses for those things that they need to feel safe and secure in their homes. Venus is making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto, and that's creating a bit of a disconnect between people's values and the powers that be. And with Venus and Gemini, people may be very vocal about what they want. But we have Jupiter making a sextile to the Sun. That is going to be very good. That is going to bring some feelings of expansion to people rather than feelings of restriction. So there may be some financial relief at this point, since the Sun is still going through Taurus. And Pluto will start to move into a sextile with Neptune. And what is going to be becoming increasingly evident is that this minor grand trine between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is starting to form and gain in strength. And as that happens, it's going to bring a larger perspective into people's minds, a more transcendent point of view. And people are going to be yearning for something different. They will be, in many instances, looking beyond the more petty problems of this world and want some kind of more enlightened or spiritual transcendence in their lives. And we may see in some sectors more people protesting against the government for the kind of changes they want. And this time, Pluto will be making a semi-sextile in quincunx to the lunar nodal axis, suggesting that the powers that be are going to have to make some adjustments in response to situations going on. And of course, we still have a lot of septiles over here, represented by that deeper violet or purple. And as I said, there's going to be an intense focus throughout this month on things that are going on. And then we get to the new moon on May 16th. We have Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Uranus conjunct one another. Perhaps fortunately, the conjunction with Uranus it's a little wide. The stronger the conjunction is, the more disruptive things would be. We have Mars, however, strongly conjunct Chiron at this point. And let's see, it was building at the third quarter moon. It's really strong at the May 16th new moon. As I said, that's where we have to watch out for law wounding through aggressive actions. But if we're lucky, we will end on the note of people taking action to heal things. Saturn is going to be making a semi-square to the sun, the moon, so people will feel some restriction at this point. Jupiter will be making that semi-square sesquiquadrate to the lunar nodal axis. And it was doing that at the third quarter moon too. And that can result in, as I said, in expanded actions, a desire for security with their homes, their family, the personal environment. Venus is making a sextile to the Mars Chiron conjunction, and that's very good and very hopeful. That increases the likelihood that we will get the pleasant side of Chiron, the healing and the more transcendent side of Chiron. And the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine is now really become evident in the heavens. And we have Pluto still making that semi-sextile quincunx to the lunar nodal axis, which suggests that those in power are going to have to make some changes or adjustments with respect to whatever situation is going on. So, a lot of things going on, some potentially bad things, but also some good things. Septiles are still strong. People will be very focused on situations in this upcoming lunar month. Of course, that horrible April 17th new moon sets the tone. Let's hope people take the high road at that point so that can be the tone for the rest of the month. Okay, so in summary, this lunar month begins with aggression, Mars-Saturn conjunct, wounding, Sun-Moon-Chiron conjunct, and confusion, Mercury-Neptune conjunct. An abundance of septiles throughout the lunar month will keep people alert and focused on whatever events are unfolding. There will be a variety of tensions of various sorts throughout the month, but most of them will be of short duration. The end of the lunar month will be more worrisome due to a conjunction of Mars with Chiron that can result in wounding from accidents or aggression. As I said, if we're lucky, if we take the high road, then we will be taking actions to heal things. Let's hope for that instead. Now let's take a look at America. And I'm using this July 2nd chart for when the Declaration of Independence was passed by the Continental Congress. Estimated time is 11:50 a.m. It appears that some astrologers have recently decided that 11:15 and 37 seconds would be a better time, so I'm probably going to move to that slightly different chart the next time I do one of these lunar months. There is some evidence that that one works out better, and evidence using artificial intelligence that the top three charts for America are this July 2nd, 1776 chart with the revised time that I just mentioned, the chart for the Battle of Lexington, set for around 5 a.m. in the morning. That's been described as the shot heard around the world. That's when armed hostilities between colonists, militia in America, and the British forces first broke out. And then the third chart that artificial intelligence feels works well for America is let's see, I think it was 1787 was the year. It was for not the ratification, but the signing of the recently passed U.S. Constitution, which made us the country that I would say the country we are today, except there seems to be a lot of abuse these days of what's in the Constitution for the United States. So now it's the law that we hope to be restored as the law of the land. Okay, looking at what's going on for America, it's going to have some ongoing tensions. Pluto is getting pretty close to that exact conjunction with the South Node, which means it's in opposition to the North Node. And it won't be exact until 2027, but it's making an impact now and throughout this entire lunar month. It intensifies the use of power, and that usually results in conflicts either at home or abroad. And this can bring about a lot of social change too. We're on the tail end of Saturn being conjunct the descendant opposite the ascendant, squaring the midheaven in this chart. When I move to the revised time, that aspect won't be so present, but at least in this chart, it suggests some tense relations with others and a certain amount of tension between the people, other countries, and the executive branch of our government. Now, what's going to be more reliable or present in both this current chart and revised chart, and also in July 4th, 1776 charts, is the square between transiting Chiron and natal Pluto. That is going to be in effect throughout the entire lunar month. What is most likely is a wounding to America's power. And it could be a wounding to the executive branch, the president of the country, when you see this sort of aspect. But in America, power is supposed to rest to the people. So the power of the people also may be wounded in some way. When we get into May, for the first couple of weeks, we have Jupiter square Chiron. That usually results in an expansion of some sort of wounding. And as we get in that last week, building up to the end of the lunar month, transing Saturn will be square the natal sun. The sun is in the 10th house, the executive branch. This could cast a dark shadow not only over the country, but over the executive branch. So we have a lot of ongoing tensions. On the good side, we have the North Node making a trine to the midheaven. That will probably not be there in the chart with the revised time, but that could be more beneficial to the executive branch and the president. We have Saturn making a good sextile to Uranus. So there are going to be attempts to innovate structures in this country. Given the current political climate, this may occur more in the private sector. Invention, re-innovating our infrastructure, for instance. And we have Jupiter making a trine to the North Node, which means he'll be making a sextile to the South Node. This will be good for growth for the country. And with Jupiter in Cancer, individual families may get some relief of some sort. Let's hope so. But there's certainly going to be some tensions throughout related to Pluto conjunct the lunar nodal axis and Chiron squaring Pluto throughout, Jupiter squaring Chiron, and then Saturn moving in to square the Sun. And so most likely we're going to be experiencing problems, misuse of power, and wounding to America's power and prestige. Now, if we look at the exact aspects that occur throughout the month, there's a lot of tensions that will come up from time to time. We have Sun square Pluto on the 17th, Mars conjunct the descendant, so it's opposite the ascendant on the 18th, Mars square Uranus on the 19th. This could be some sudden act of violence, mass shootings, for example, or military things we do. Oh, I said Mars square Uranus, sorry, bad eyesight. That is going to be Mars square the midheaven, which could impact Trump and the executive branch. 22nd through 24th, we have a series of tense aspects: Mercury square Sun, Mars square Sun, Mercury opposite Saturn, so there could be aggression, restriction. April 28th, that's a day to keep an eye out for because Mars will be in opposition to natal Saturn, and that's when some act of violence or aggression would be more likely to occur. May 1st and 2nd don't look good. We have Mercury square Pluto, followed by Chiron square Pluto. So some sort of face-off with power and wounding of power, most likely. And then on the 5th, Mars will be conjunct natal Chiron. Again, that could result in some aggressive sort of wounding for the country. And the 8th, Jupiter square Chiron, usually results in some kind of wounding. On May 12th, we have Mars square Mercury, Venus square Neptune. So there's going to be maybe some zealous actions taken on that day, aggression as things run counter to people's values. Though if we're lucky, it's just aggressive rhetoric. And then on the 15th, Mars will square Pluto, and that could also be a day of violence. So there are a lot of things going on involving Mars that could result in increased tension and violence at particular points throughout the month. Increased violence for America. Let's see, looking at the April 17th new moon, we still have transing lunar nodal axis square Uranus. That is waning now. But as it was building, we got involved in war with Venezuela and then Iran. So hopefully that appetite for revolution or war is fading. But we have Sun, Moon, and Chiron see very strongly square natal Pluto. So I'm anticipating some wounding to America's power. It could be the country's power, the president's power, or the people's power, or all three. Transing Saturn and Mars are conjunct the descendant opposite the ascendant, square the midheaven, which could create discord with allies and trouble for the executive branch. In the revised chart I'll use next month, ascendant will be a little different. And this conjunction will take place in the 7th house, but it may not involve ascendant and midheaven. It won't in the chart that I'll be switching to. However, Pluto is still getting close to that exact conjunction with the lunar nodal axis. Won't occur exactly until next year, but that is intensifying our use of power, which usually gets us involved in conflict. And transiting Mars is squaring Jupiter, which can magnify aggression. But Pluto is making a quincunx, let's see, to natal Jupiter. So people are having to make adjustments in their personal environments. Jupiter is near the cusp of the 10th house, so the executive branch will also have to make adjustments. But Venus trine Neptune is going to create some optimism among people. So that's a good thing. Things hopefully will get better, or at least people will feel that. And Saturn and Mars are going to make a trine, a sextile to the north node, south node in this lunar nodal axis. That might lead to more coordinated actions. Hopefully, it will be actions toward resolution of conflict rather than increasing conflict. And that could happen if we get Saturn restraining Mars in a proper way. Otherwise, Saturn's frustration, Mars feels that restraint, but then tensions boil over and explode. That's what we don't want, but that could happen. And the lunar nodal axis is making a trine sextile to the midheaven. That could benefit the presidency, the executive branch. But when I adjust these house cusps next month, that is not going to be present. At the first quarter moon, we have Chiron still square, Pluto, Saturn still making a square to the midheaven, opposition to the ascendant, conjunct the descendant. Transiting Mars is going to be making a square to Sun. With Sun in the 10th house, that could be some aggressive actions taken toward the president or the executive branch. It could be an accident, increased likelihood of accidents. It could be other countries speaking out against us. But something of a Martian nature occurring at this point that will affect the presidency or the country. Transing Pluto still conjunct that lunar nodal axis. Transing Uranus and Venus appear making a sesquiquadrant to natal Saturn over here. So some unexpected developments will probably cause frustration for the American people. Pluto is still making a quincunx to that natal Jupiter. We talked about that. Saturn is making a sextile. Let's see here, to natal Uranus. That could help stabilize things, help stabilize America's tendency to engage in chaotic actions or revolutionary or aggressive actions. Instead, try and develop a long-term plan. Transing lunar nodal axis is making trine sextile to the midheaven. And that will be more beneficial for the leadership of the country. Very next day, when Neptune crosses from southern to northern declination, we're going to have pretty much a lot of the same. Transing Chiron, still square natal Pluto. Transing Saturn, still opposite ascendant, square midheaven. Transing Mars, still square Sun up here. Transing Pluto, still conjunct lunar nodal axis. Transing Uranus, still square natal Saturn. Pluto still making the quincunx to natal Jupiter. Saturn still sextile natal Uranus. And the lunar nodal axis still making the trine sextile to the midheaven. So none of the main aspects really change. from the 23rd to the 24th in terms of transits to America's chart. At the full moon on May 1st, we still have transing Chiron square natal Pluto. So this wounding to America's power in some form or fashion, whether it's the president or the people, that is continuing throughout this month. And at this point, we have transing Mars conjunct natal Chiron. Remember, as we get in that last week of the month, we have transing Mars conjunct transing Chiron. So there's probably going to be wounding in the latter part of this lunar month, which is not really going to be separate from the wounding to America. And let's see. We also have transing Pluto, still conjunct the lunar nodal axis, quincunx Jupiter, and Saturn still sextile natal Uranus that we have talked about already. Okay. And let's look at third quarter moon. Again, we still have transing Chiron, square natal Pluto. Transing Jupiter has moved into a very strong square to natal Chiron. That usually brings about some wounding somewhere in America. Transing Pluto still conjunct the lunar nodal axis. Transiting Mars, it's still conjunct natal Chiron. That aspect is waning, but its conjunction with transing Chiron is applying now. So as I say, the wounding to America is going to be intertwined with wounding of the world, most likely. If we're very, very lucky, we get the good side of this, the healing side of Chiron, rather than the wounding side. We might get a little bit of that. I certainly hope so. America has probably evolved somewhat since its founding, but there's still a good chance that we will get some significant wounding rather than significant healing. And of course, transing Pluto is still making that quincunx to natal Jupiter, which could mean that the executive branch has to adapt to what is going on, and also that people in their homes, their personal finances, their families, they're going to have to adapt to the situation. And when we get to the new moon on May 16th, Chiron and Mars are both making a strong square to natal Pluto. That could be very explosive. There could be some physical attacks of some sort, perhaps terrorist attacks or mass shootings again, war abroad. A lot of different ways this could work out. We can only hope that people keep their cool, keep their heads, don't lose their heads, and that they take the high road rather than the low road. But Saturn is going to be square Sun. Sun is in the 10th house. Probably a lot of criticism of America and Trump from allies in America, and Americans may be experiencing shortages of various sorts. Pluto is still conjunct the lunar nodal axis. We're intensifying our use of power, and that's not always a good thing when we do that. And the transing lunar nodal axis makes a semi-square sesquiquadrate to natal Chiron that can intensify some wounding in this country. So it's not a certainty, but there is a potential for a lot of wounding of various sorts for America and Americans as this month goes on. There is a slimmer chance, probably, that we will get the healing side of Chiron rather than the wounding side. It all depends upon whether we take the high road or the low road. And the lunar nodal axis is making a sextile trine to natal Jupiter at this new moon. So we may start to get some relief for families and people in their environments, and this will be beneficial to the executive branch too. But Pluto is still making that quincunx to natal Jupiter. Let's see. That was there throughout the entire lunar month. So what we can expect is that not only the executive branch, but people in their homes, the overall growth projections for America, adjustments are going to have to be made as a result of the way in which power is being expressed in the world at this time. So, in summary, the country's fervor for war or revolution is waning. Lunar nodal axis is in separating square to natal Uranus. The power of the United States and its people or leader will be wounded, most likely. We could get healing, but wounding is probably more probable as a result of that Sun Moon Chiron square to natal Pluto. Relationships with other countries will be both aggressive and strained. Mars Saturn conjunct descendant. Aggressive activities will expand. Jupiter square natal Mars, Mars square natal Sun. Social transformation is underway. Pluto conjunct natal South Node. America may be wounded through violence in the second half of the lunar month. Mars conjunct natal Chiron, Mars Chiron square natal Pluto. And the country and executive branch will feel constrained by the end of the lunar month. Saturn square natal 10th house Sun. Okay, and lastly, let's take a look at Trump. And there is his chart. We have an exact time of birth, June 14th, 1946, 10:54 a.m. in Queens, New York. And he's got some good stuff, some tense stuff. In terms of the tensions, Uranus is moving into an exact square with his ascendant. His actions are chaotic. Jupiter is square Jupiter. He's engaging in over-the-top actions. A good example of this, I mean, we're experiencing it right now. We're over here right now. And a good example of all of this was that meme that he posted of himself as Jesus healing the people. Saturn is squaring his Mercury, so he will tend to feel restricted and frustrated. For much of this lunar month, this peaks on April 28th. If we go back to this chart, let's see, Mercury rules Gemini. He's got a lot of planets in Gemini in the 10th house. This can be restrictions on his power. But Mercury is in Cancer. It's in the 11th house, which has to do with collaborative efforts with others. And of course, he's feeling very frustrated now because he can't get the NATO countries to support his, what he calls his excursion into Iran, and that might get worse. On the good side, though, Chiron is going to be trying his natal Mars for most of the month, and his Mars is conjunct his ascendant. This brings healing to him, both physically and otherwise. Pluto is trying his second house natal Neptune. This can benefit him greatly financially, but in this case, Pluto and Neptune are probably doing things behind the scenes, so we don't know exactly what's going on. But He could benefit financially from things he's doing behind the scenes, and he might have some increased kind of charisma, or this may fortify even his delusional thinking. Saturn square Pluto, that will also probably result in some structures being put in place that will benefit him personally, and it may all be behind the scenes. Jupiter conjunct Saturn, all the conjunctions are color-coded red, but this one will be beneficial. And so Saturn has to do with his health because it rules his sixth house. It also has to do with his status because it's conjunct Venus, which rules his 10th house. So he may consolidate power in more ways. And despite criticisms and over-the-top actions and a truly manic psychotic state at times and other frustrations, he's going to get some healing in a variety of ways and might benefit financially and solidify his power for now, at least. If we look at the exact aspects that occur throughout the month, April 17th, he will have Mars opposite his Neptune. That could result in some acts of violence or accidents that occur. Perhaps more likely is that he will take aggressive actions based upon his own delusions or misinformation, and that he will want to benefit financially from Iranian oil in some way. On the 19th, we have the exact square between trancing Jupiter and natal Jupiter. That usually results in some over-the-top actions that he'll take. On April 24th, we have Mercury opposite Chiron, Uranus exactly square his ascendant. That's when his manicness may be at its height, very chaotic actions, and probably some kind of wounding of some sort. April 26th, Saturn exactly square Mercury. He'll be feeling frustrated. And then on the 28th, Mars is going to be in exact opposition to Chiron. Greater chance of physical wounding or accidents at this point. Let's see, on the 29th and 30th, he has a series of squares. Mercury square Saturn, Sun square Pluto, Mercury square Venus. So he'll probably feel more frustrated, more angry at this time. On May 2nd, he has Mars in opposition to Jupiter. And let's see, his Jupiter is here in his second house. This is following up on the opposition of Mars to Chiron. Things could wound him even financially. He may be wounded in other ways. May 8th, Venus conjunct Uranus. And that's kind of following a transit-to-transit conjunction of Venus with Uranus. He's likely to take some very chaotic, unpredictable actions on this day based upon his values or his gut feel about things. And May 10th may be a day when he's a danger to himself or others, as Mars is squaring his Saturn. Could be aggressive actions taken out of frustration or even violence toward him. Okay, if we look at the new moon on April 17th, we have Uranus square his ascendant. That's making him very chaotic now. Jupiter square Jupiter. That's those over-the-top actions. Mars and Saturn are conjunct and opposite his Neptune. And remember, when Saturn and Neptune were exactly conjunct is on the cusp of his 8th house. Eighth house has a lot of different associations. It's death, transformation, other people's resources, other people's values. Since that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, he has engaged in activities that have caused the deaths of thousands of people around the world. And he's focused quite a bit on the grabbing the resources of other people, other countries, other people's resources. He may do this more aggressively around the time of the new moon or on the 19th when Mars and Saturn are exactly conjunct. Those are just some of the possibilities. Since Neptune is involved, could be oil. Uh, let's see, transing Jupiter, square Jupiter, over the top. Actions, transing Mars, we've talked about that. Transing Uranus, sesquiquadrate, natal Chiron. There could be some sudden wounding to him, figuratively or actually, or it could be a wounding to his resources or finances in some way. Pluto is making a semi-square sesquiquadrate to his lunar nodal axis, and that's interesting because in the USA chart, Pluto is conjunct the lunar nodal axis. So he is really using and abusing power a lot, getting us involved in a lot of conflicts. But transiting Chiron while trying his natal Mars, and transiting Pluto will be trying his natal Neptune. This is going to bring healing to him of all sorts and strengthen either his delusions or his financial status. His resources and the United States resources are the same now. So it's not like he has to increase his financial standing. He could just increase his power over the resources of the country. That benefits him too. At the first quarter, we have a lot of this still going on. Transing Uranus, still square natal ascendant. Transing Jupiter, still square natal Jupiter. Transiting Saturn is now very strongly square natal Mercury. We did not have that one last time. That is going to cause some frustrations for him in his dealings, communications with allies and people he collaborates with. Transing Uranus, still making sesquiquadrate to natal Chiron. Transing Pluto, still making the semi-square sesquiquadrate to the poles of the lunar nodal axis. And transing Pluto, still trine Neptune. Transing Chiron, still trine natal Mars. So those things are continuing. He's going to continue to get some healing and some lifelines. Jupiter is making a semi-sextile to Uranus. Now, when Jupiter was conjunct his natal Uranus, it was, I think, about a year ago in March, and he was getting ready to put all these tariffs into place. And when we get to the semi-sextile, it's like whatever policies he was imagining a year ago, back in mid-March, early April, he's now ready to set them loose. And that is not necessarily going to be a good thing for America. On the 24th, when Neptune moves from southern to northern declination, we probably have a lot of the same stuff going on. Let's see. We still have Uranus squaring the ascendant, Jupiter square natal Jupiter, Saturn still square Mercury, still have Uranus sesquiquadrate natal Chiron. Now we have transiting Mars sesquiquadrate natal Mars. That is going to increase the likelihood of accidents or violence or something physical happening. At the very least, he will probably get very angry about something. Pluto is still semi-square sesquiquadrate lunar nodal axis. And he still has transing Pluto trinatal Neptune, transing Chiron, trinatal Mars. Those lifelines are still there. Of course, Jupiter is still making the semi-sextile to natal Uranus. So the visions, the plans he had a year ago, he's going to move them into the next phase more likely in some form or fashion. And as Jupiter moves into a conjunction with natal Saturn and natal Venus, that is going to improve his health and his status, most likely. But there's some other things we'll talk about, not this month, but other months, which can also cause him a lot of problems. Okay, at the full moon, still have transing Uranus square natal ascendant. That is lasting, it looks like, throughout the lunar month. Saturn is now making the square to natal Mercury. We had that previous week. And it's just past exact. Transing Mars is in opposition to natal Jupiter. Uh, Again, possibility of accidents or violence or death, either his or death of others affecting him. And it could also be trying to grab other countries' resources to expand his own wealth. Saturn making a semi-square to his midheaven. That will cause some restrictions on his power. Pluto still making the semi-square sesquiquadrate to the lunar nodal axis. He still has Pluto trine Neptune, Chiron trine Mars. That's continuing throughout the month. And now he even has Saturn trine natal Pluto. Pluto rules his fourth house. It's in his 12th house. This has a lot to do with his real estate empire and things that go on behind the scenes. So he's going to be solidifying something going on behind the scenes, probably to grab other people's resources. That's one of the possibilities. And with things going on behind the scenes, we may not know exactly. Third quarter moon still have transing Uranus square the ascendant. Chaotic actions throughout the month, flip-flops, reversals. Transiting Mars square his natal Saturn. He could feel very angry, very aggressive at this point. This is also something that could happen to him medically since Saturn rules his sixth house of health, possibility of surgery that he has to undergo. Or as I said, it could be aggressive actions he takes against others or aggression directed toward him or an accident. Transing Pluto is still semi-square sesquiquadrate, the lunar nodal axis, intensifying his use of power. But he still has Pluto trine his natal Neptune, Chiron trine his natal Mars, bringing healing and assisting his use of power. And transing Saturn is still involved in that trine to natal Pluto. Now it's exact to the degree. Very strong at this point. And the transing lunar nodal axis is making a semi-sextile and quincunx to Neptune. So there may be some adjustments he has to make when it comes to his own finances or personal resources. At the new moon, Sun and Moon will be squaring his natal Mars. I expect anger at the least. That seems to be his most common way of expressing things when his Mars is being poked at. Could be an accident or violence of some sort. Transing Pluto, still semi-square sesquiquadrate, that lunar nodal axis. Pluto trine Neptune. Saturn is still trining Pluto. Chiron, you can see Mars and Chiron are pretty tightly conjunct at this point, at this new moon. It's almost an exact conjunction. And that is moving away from the trine to his natal Mars, but it's moving into a trine to his natal ascendant. So that is going to be beneficial to him, give him a lot of extra energy and healing. What does for the world, that is another matter. And let's see, he still has Pluto trine Neptune, that's throughout the month. Saturn trine Pluto, that's for a lot of the month. Entrancing Jupiter is now making a quincunx to his natal moon. So his personality, his gut feelings have to make some kind of adjustment. Perhaps with Jupiter in Cancer, the economic situation of families may result in him making some personal adjustments to things. So, in summary, Trump's actions will be chaotic, spontaneous, unpredictable, and frequently flip-flopping throughout most of this lunar month due to transing Uranus square natal ascendant. Transing Jupiter square natal Jupiter may result in many over-the-top actions and an inflated sense of power. These two are in effect right now. And as I said, we've seen this manifest in terms of the meme of him as Jesus that he posted. A series of adverse aspects from Saturn and Mars can result in frequent periods of frustration and outbursts of anger. Could also result in accidents or maybe physical attacks upon him. A sesquiquadrate from Pluto to the lunar nodal axis could intensify Trump's desire for power and it's intensifying his use of power. A trine from transing Neptune to natal Mars will help Trump heal physically, and Saturn trine natal Pluto in the second half of the month will help Trump consolidate his control and power. Okay, that is the end of this. Let me stop sharing. And I'm back and I'm in focus, more or less. So, the previous lunar month from March through April, let's see, March 18th through April 17th, that had a lot of aggression, a lot of changes that were brought to the world and the world order. This month, people are going to be very focused on things. There's going to be a lot going on too. The climax of the previous lunar month also is the tone that is set for this month. And so there's going to be a lot of focus on the war, the aggression, and the wounding that is going on, probably restrictions to global economies. And America in particular will probably experience a lot of wounding this month, could manifest as healing, but I think wounding is more likely at this point. And Trump is going to be very chaotic and engage in a lot of over-the-top actions while also consolidating his control and power over things. So we're not out of the woods yet. The one good thing is that the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto minor grand trine is starting to come back into focus. And that's going to be really strong. by July, and the second half of the year is going to have many more harmonious aspects than the first half of the year. That's when things may get better and when people's outlooks will probably change a lot. We're seeing some of this change in outlook, for instance, in the recent election in Hungary, where Viktor Orban was soundly defeated. Uh, so I think people are beginning to open up their minds and get back on a more progressive track for humanity. But for now, we still have a tense month ahead. I'm hoping that we avoid the worst kind of wounding that could come along from war. I hope that some ceasefire talks and peace talks are successful, but it may be a bit of a long shot. It may be, 60% chance of something bad, 40% chance of something good, something like that. But we'll just have to wait and see how it all turns out. But, keep your seatbelts on because, as I say, there's going to be a lot still going on in this lunar month. Most likely, we're not out of the woods yet, but if you can, focus on actions that will heal rather than wound. And the more healing we can bring into the picture, the better off we're all going to be. Because remember, astrology is not fate, it's a weather report. And astrology just by itself, it inclines us in certain directions, but it's not all that strong. It's not like gravity where you jump out of a plane without a parachute. You can't use free will to stop yourself from falling, hitting the earth, and probably dying. But astrology, it's a subtler influence. We can influence things by free will. So the more that each of us takes the high road, the better this month will be. So keep that in mind too. And for now, I'll just say so long and be well.